Fresno, California. I'm 32 years old, and when I came here to DAP, I was addicted. I've been on drugs for a long time, probably about 15 years, but when I came down here to DAP, I was addicted to heroin and pills, and had a really bad habit. I probably spent about $75, $100 a day on drugs. And very unhappy and very lonely. My life had no direction. I was frequently suicidal. I felt as if my life had no purpose. I had no reason to live. Because of the drugs that I was on when I was here, I was very, very sick. And I think, like, I don't know if anybody in here is familiar with drugs like that, but you get physically addicted as well. I had no strength. Basic tasks made me tired. I think, I remember on my first day, like, we do landscaping for a living, and they asked me to cut a piece of grass maybe as big as this aisle right here, and I thought I was going to die. And my complexion was terrible. I had no color in my skin. I was practically a skeleton. I think because I used IV drugs, I used needles. Like, I had infections all the time. I had like abscesses in my arm, and just very disgusting. I didn't eat properly. Anything that I did eat was like soda or candy. But I had a terrible diet, and it's just terrible. You know, when you're on drugs, like those kind of drugs, that your body physically needs them all the time. Like, you're completely 100% dependent on those drugs. Like, if I didn't use, like, every 6 to 8 hours, I would start to get physically sick. That's how dependent I was.
That's unreal.
I couldn't go, I couldn't go an entire day without using it. I had to feed a habit that makes it so that my mind only focused on getting drugs. You know, I wasn't even really like a person anymore. The entire focus of my life was to get drugs so I wouldn't get sick. I didn't even get high anymore.
How do you get your drugs? Where do you get the money?
No, the way that I maintain myself, I mean, as my drug career or whatever progressed, you know, like, I had jobs, but at some point I wasn't even able to function as like a regular person. I no longer had a functioning drug habit, and I sold drugs to get money, and then that just all the evil that I have to do to get drugs. You know, I had to lie, cheat, steal, shoplift to my parents, to anybody. I use people. But when you sell drugs, not only are you using people, but the people that you sell drugs to have to use people as well. And it just compounds the evil that's involved. And at some point, like I said, my life had started to break down. This was probably about 4 years ago, when I was just 100%, I was just a junkie. I just sold drugs, I didn't do anything.
That's unreal.
And all my interaction with people was only to get more money to get drugs, you know. And it was awful. I was a very selfish person. Because of my selfishness, all of my relationships had died. I was completely alone. The only human contact that I had was, like I said, to get drugs. I medicated myself so much that in between fixes I wouldn't feel suicidal. It was very, very lonely.
That's unreal.
The only thing that I had was the drugs. And I knew, even then I knew that that was nothing. Over the years that I've done drugs, I've done all kinds of bad things. All bad things that I've done, bad things that have happened to me. I've lost jobs. I was in the military once. I got kicked out of the military for using drugs. I've rented cars. I've injured myself. I almost fell off a 13th story of like a hotel balcony. And by the grace of God, I didn't. Still, to this day, I don't know how it happened, you know, except the only explanation I have was God. I've woken up in strange places with strange women. I've woken up with married women. I've woken up with strange needles lying around where I didn't know where I got them, and I don't know if they were clean or dirty. I've overdosed on more than one occasion. All of these things are because of drug use, you know. Reckless, sinful things that I never people, you know, when I hear these testimonies, like people like to talk about near-death experiences, and one that stands out in my mind, I think, and this was a long time ago, about 10 years ago, but I remember that I would get really high all the time, and I would drive, and it was just absolutely dangerous. And I knew that it was dangerous, but I didn't really care. And I can't even count the times while driving that I had nodded off, that I'd woken up like at a stoplight that I didn't remember driving to. I think on more than one occasion I've woken up like paramedics surrounding me because they thought, or I guess I had, because I had a beep and they were trying to resuscitate me. But one specific memory that I have when I was driving late at night, and after 2 or 3 a.m. I think even at the time that I was going to an ATM, and I think I was probably getting money to get a prostitute. Already, you know, I was just being sinful this whole night. It was just sin. I remember that it was winter, the roads were frozen over. I knew that I had to be careful because the road was frozen. But even then, I didn't listen to the voice in my head. The car that I was driving at the time, I remember it was a rear-wheel drive car. So if anybody's familiar, but you have to be very careful. You know, if you turn too hard or if you give it too much gas, you'll spin out. And I think that night, I mean, I was just getting out of the ATM and I was turning out of a red light, and I remember, like, I didn't even care. You know, I knew that I had to be careful. I knew all these things, but I still, I gunned it too hard and I started to spin out, and I spun 180 degrees around, and then I went down like a hill into like a parking lot, and I just remember that so vividly. You know, all of the things in my life were foggy, but I remember this quite clearly. Was that there was a telephone pole and it went right by the driver's window. It was probably about 6 inches away from my car, and at the rate of speed I was going, how fast I was going, I would have totaled the car, but I would have totaled myself. You know, I would have really hurt myself, maybe even died. And I've heard people use the phrase that Satan was trying to kill me, and I don't know if I didn't say this, but I'm not really a religious person, or I wasn't before I got to this program. So at the time, I didn't really think like it was God and Satan and these forces were at work in this particular situation. But looking back, I can tell that the only thing that kept me from hitting that telephone pole and dying was God.
Amen.
And His power. You know?
Amen.
And this was despite all the things, I mean, everything I was doing. I was going to get a prostitute, I was doing drugs, I was driving when I wasn't supposed to, endangering other people's. All the sin that I was doing at just that very moment, and still God stepped in to save me. Amen. That's one of the most powerful examples of His love and care for me. For all of us, really. I think people worry about their place in the world and their purpose. I know that God gives me purpose. Again and again in the Bible, we're promised the things that God will do for us. Saints and sinners alike. If God stepped in for me that night, then I know that I can trust His promises throughout the Bible.
Amen.
Amen. All the time.
Amen.
I think I have a couple of minutes. I just wanted to say, I should say something about the Harrises and what they've done for me. And both Mr. and Mrs. Harris are very caring people, you know.
Amen.
And the reason that they care so much is because I truly believe that they're trying to emulate Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Amen.
And Christ Himself said, "I'll make you fishers of men." And I think that, I think that the Harrises, you know, they really are. This ministry, this whole thing is about bringing people to Christ.
Amen.
And I just wish that, I hope that one day that I can emulate Christ the way that Mr. and Mrs. Harris did.
Amen.
You know? And I don't think I have really too much else to say. Can I answer a question?
How did you get out? How did you get out? Like, what was the point that you were able to give it all to God and get out of it?
Well, I mean, it's a popular phrase, but I had hidden what they call rock bottom, probably. I think the situation where I was living in, like, I would be on the streets. And so, knowing that I needed something and hitting rock bottom and you know, I haven't, you know, I've heard of DAP before, but I think, to answer your question, getting out of it, like, it was more like, I didn't have anything else, you know, and I knew that I needed something, and accepting that I needed something, that I needed something more, and realizing that that's God, you know, and that's Christ in my life.
Yeah.
Amen.
You sound like you are well educated.
I have, like, I've been to a little bit of college, but I spent so much time using drugs after high school that,
How old are you?
oh, excuse me, I'm 32 years old.
How long have you been on drugs?
I started using drugs about 14 years old.
You're kidding.
Yeah, I started using drugs 14 when I was in high school, and it was just socially, like, I went to an Adventist high school for a little bit.
Where?
And I still use drugs there. Oh, I went to Adventist high school in Fresno. Did you guys? And, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
All right.
I wanted to mention one thing. One influence Chris had was his brother, Jason. His brother, Jason Wymore, also completed our program. And when you saw the big change in Jason, he wanted to come to DAP. In fact, his mother said, "Are you sure you want to come to DAP?" He said, "Yeah, Mom, I want to go." And you know, this man has made a 180-degree turnaround.
Amen. Amen.